In this video, we're going to start thinking about putting together the user header component. To be precise, we're not going to work on the component just yet. Instead, we're going to focus on making sure that we have loaded up the data that we need to show the user header. Now, that might sound confusing, so let me give you a quick reminder on how this API is structured. All right, here's the documentation for the API we are using. Remember, it's at jsonplaceholder.typeicode.com. I'm looking at the resources section. At present, we are loading up this list of posts into our application. So our app is currently showing 100 different blog posts on the screen. We can open up that endpoint, and we can see all the data that our application is currently retrieving. All right, here we go. So we have this list of blog posts. We have a body, we have a title, we have the ID of each blog post, and then very important for what we are trying to do right now, we have the ID of the user who made this blog post. So this post right here was made by the user with ID 1. And the same thing with the next post and the next post and so on. Every 10 posts inside of here has been made by a different user. So if I scroll down 10 posts, I'll see that I now move on to the next user, the user with ID number 2. And then we can keep on going down, 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 down. Eventually we'll see that we get to user with ID 10. So all of the blog posts that we have retrieved are made by user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. So to figure out the details about each of those users, we are going to have to make an additional API request. If you go back over to this resources section right here, you'll see the user's endpoint. So we can open up that request, and you'll see that this endpoint has 10 different users. So user with ID 1, ID 2, and all the way down to ID 10 down here. So essentially, if we want to show the actual name of the author of that post inside this user header component, for every blog post, we are going to have to make a follow-up request to the user's endpoint, get that list of users, and then that will tell us essentially who made which blog post. Okay, so now that we understand the problem here, I want to tell you there's kind of an easy way to do this, and there is a hard way to do it. So let me first show you the easy way, because unfortunately for us, we're going to do it the hard way. So easy way first. All right, so quick diagram. I put this diagram together here just to make sure it's really clear how the list of posts related to each user, but I think you probably understand that relationship, so we'll just skip that diagram. Okay, so we know that we have the entire list of posts, and we know that that user's endpoint will return us every user that exists inside of this kind of little mini application. In other words, if we make a request to posts and a second request to the user's endpoint, we're going to have, without a doubt, all of the application, or all the data that our application needs. Now here's the problem. That's like way too easy. This is a little sample application to help you learn things. Nonetheless, just getting that entire list of users from the get-go is just entirely too easy. Let me tell you why that's too easy. I want you to think about a real blogging application, like say medium.com, if you've ever been over there. Medium.com has like millions of blog posts, millions of users. If they want to show a list of blog posts along with their authors to the user, or to a user as we are doing right now, the Medium people, the engineers, are not going to send your browser a list of like 1 million blog posts and 1 million users. Instead, they're going to send you like 10 blog posts to show on the screen or something like that, and then you'll have to make a follow-up request for each of those individual users. So if we just made the request for all the users that we would ever need, it's just too easy and it's not realistic. That is not how you're going to see things done in a real application. So instead, we're going to do things kind of like a hard way, all right? Just a little bit more challenging. If you go back over to the documentation over here, under the resources section, you can see there is routes right here. So take a look at the second route. What this is essentially telling us is that we can make requests to get one individual record at a time, as opposed to these big, gigantic lists of records that we've been taking a look at. So for example, if I wanted to only get the user with ID 1, I could change the URL up here from /users to users/1. So that means, as you might guess, give me the user with the ID of 1. And so when I go there, I see just the first user on the screen. And I can do user with ID 2, and so on all the way up to user with ID 10, like so. So with that in mind, here's the flow that you and I are going to go through. All right. So inside of our application, everything is going to start off with us fetching that list of posts. So we're going to make an API request, And then after some period of time, indicated by this little arrow right here, we're going to get a response. We're going to return that data from our reducer, all that stuff. And then eventually we're going to show our list of posts to the user inside that post list component. Now, inside of that render list method that we have inside there, we're going to create a separate instance of the user header component for every individual post. In other words, if we go back over to the render list method right here, this map function right here, or the inner function I should say, is going to be executed 100 times because we have 100 different posts. So somewhere inside of here, like let's say right here, we're going to place our user header component, and we're going to give it a prop of something like user ID. And inside of here, we'll put whatever this particular user's ID is for this particular blog post, be it like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, 10, whatever it is. And so we're going to create a bunch of instances of the user header component, and each one is going to know exactly what ID user it needs to show on the screen. Now I'm going to clean this code up. I just wanted to give you a quick example. So then inside of the user header component, we're going to add a call to a new action creator that's going to attempt to fetch just the individual user that instance of the user header needs. So we're going to end up with a bunch of separate requests for each individual user. So this would be like fetch user ID 1, this would be like ID 2 and ID 3 and so on. And so we're going to make 10 separate requests in theory, one for each user. We'll get each user, return it back to our application, somehow process that through a reducer, and somehow get each relevant user into each instance of the user header component. All right, so that's the idea. Essentially, the idea here, just to sum up, is that if we just fetch the entire list of users, that is too easy, and the real world does not work like that. You're not going to get this like nice endpoint that's just going to give you a list of every record that you need in the real world. Instead, it's way more common to do some initial request to get like a list of records, and then to have to make a bunch of individual follow-up requests to get more information about each of the original records. And so that is exactly what we want to do. We want to get the big list and then make some smaller requests to follow up on it and get just the information we need. Okay, so along the way, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to encounter one or two kind of catastrophic problems, but hey, that's where the learning actually kicks in. So anyways, let's take a quick pause right here, and we're going to start putting all this solution together in the next video.